Sandslash is a Pokemon that hasn't aged well in terms of solo running capabilities. In Generation 1 it did really well, but in FireRed a lot of the things that gave it success in Generation 1 just aren't around anymore. So today I'm going to examine how badly it aged going from Generation 1 into Generation 3 in this solo challenge of Pokemon FireRed using only the Sandslash line. These are the rules, now let's get into it. I'm starting with the Sandshrew. For base stats it has 50 HP, 75 attack, 85 defense, 40 speed, 20 special attack, and 30 special defense. So it's slow, it's physical, and it is terrible at doing special things. Luckily for me, it's never really going to be utilizing its offensive special stat, so that's a good allocation of stat points. Sandshrew starts with only one move, Scratch, then through level up it gets Defense Curl at 6, Sand Attack at 11, and Poison Sting at 17. This is not a good complement of moves to have when Brock is the first gym leader. At level 23 it gets Slash, and then from there everything goes downhill. Swift, Fury Swipes, Sand Tomb, and Sandstorm. It's really frustrating that this line does not learn Earthquake by level up. At least it gets that move through TM and HM. It also gets some other coverage, Iron Tail, Rock Tomb, Aerial Ace, those kind of things. And it does learn one of the best moves in any solo challenge, which is Swords Dance through Move Tutor. However, this tutor is only available on 7 Island, which is only accessible in the post game after you've defeated the champion. I'm going to talk about this more later on, but for now, I need to solve the problem of Brock. I knew that it was going to be fairly brutal to defeat him, so I do some training on Route 1, but then I later switched to training on Route 22 since Mankey can show up here. They're nice to knock out because they give attack EVs. The reason I'm doing this early game training is so I can level up over damage rounding thresholds and then fight the rival on Route 22 for additional experience. At level 10 I was confident, I set up some defense curls here, and then after that I used Scratch knocking the Pidgey out, and the Bulbasaur doesn't have a grass type move yet, so it is also easy to manage. I battled some more wild Pokemon on Route 22 to level up to 11, getting access to Sand Attack. This might be my solution for Brock. I don't really want to level all the way to 17 since I have a medium fast growth rate, which doesn't level up particularly quickly in the early game. Battling the trainers inside Viridian Forest brings Sandshrew up to level 13. I'm now going to have to resort to wild training if I want to increase my level because the junior trainer inside of Brock's gym doesn't seem like a good prospect to battle right now. He has a Geodude, it knows Defense Curl, and my only damage dealing move is Scratch. So I grind on wild Pokemon until Sandshrew reaches level 15 over a damage rounding threshold. Now, I wanted to test and see if this would make Brock possible, even if it's gonna be a long fight. The strategy against him is fairly simple. Use Sand Attack, lower Geodude's accuracy a bunch, then set up Defense Curl so Sandshrew is taking almost no damage every turn. After I've done that, I'm going to use Scratch to knock the Geodude out, and this is going to be really slow because, like the junior trainer, this Geodude also knows Defense Curl. I was hoping that Geodude would miss more, but it ends up hitting me many times with Tackle, and Sandshrew gets taken to roughly half health by the time I knock out his first Pokemon. So now I have to go up against Onix, and the matchup here is much worse. While Sand Attack can blind Brock's Pokemon, if it occasionally hits with Bind, then I'm going to be losing a percentage of my health every turn. There's also another issue that Sandshrew is facing, and that's the fact that I only have 11 uses of Sand Attack left over. Unless I'm doing significant damage, which I'm really not, I will have to rely on Struggle, meaning I would have to deplete all of Defense Curl's 37 remaining PP, and that's just not going to work. Plus, I don't even get the option of running out of Scratch before Onix knocks Sandshrew out. I went back to the forest, found myself a Kakuna, and then depleted some of Sand Attack and Defense Curl's PP. I was hoping to get another run against the Onix that felt pretty solid like last time, and if I get a little bit luckier with Sand Attack, I definitely know that Sandshrew can pull this off. However, each one of these battles is very slow. I lose 3 more times for a total of 4 losses against Brock before I decided I need a different approach. Unlike in Generation 1, Brock does not have 5 full heals. He doesn't even have a single full heal. So if I train up to level 17, then I'm going to get access to Poison Sting, and I think that inflicting the status condition on Brock's Pokemon is going to be my ticket to victory. At level 17, now I can use Poison Sting to inflict the status condition, and that does dramatically help Sandshrew here. This is where I want to make my first comparison with Generation 1. If I was starting those games with only Sandshrew and having to evolve throughout the run like I do here in FireRed, then Sandshrew would have Scratch and Sand Attack for Brock until level 17. It does not learn Defense Defense Curl, which is actually an advantage strangely because then I have less PP to deplete before I get access to Struggle. And in Generation 1, Sand Attack is more effective. Just one use of this move modifies accuracy by a factor of 0.66, whereas in Generation 3, one use of Sand Attack modifies accuracy by a factor of 0.75. So you're decreasing the opponent's accuracy by less in later generations. Also, with maxed out Sand Attacks, the accuracy modification is 0.25 in Generation 1, whereas in Generation 3 it's 0.33. Now if Sandshrew did train all the way to level 17 in Generation 1, then it gets access to Slash, a move that has a high critical hit rate, meaning it will do more damage to Brock's Pokemon. Plus, in Generation 1, there is also Yellow version where his Pokemon are 2 levels lower. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but there are still more things that make this fight easier in Generation 1. Onix has Bide. Bide is a terrible move when you have a move like Sand Attack, which can just stall it out until it does nothing. In Generation 3, the Onix is always going to deal damage with either Tackle, Bind, or Rock Tomb. And the reasons continue because in Generation 1, Bind does not deal damage every turn based on a fixed percentage of health. It just traps the Pokemon and repeats its damage over and over again until it either misses or until the opponent moves first. And if you just do a little bit of intelligent planning with Sandshrew, you will be able to outspeed the Onix. In this case at level 17, I have more speed than Brock's Onix. So I hope I've emphasized the point enough. Yeah, Brock is much more difficult for Sandshrew in FireRed, and because of that, I have a terrible first split, around 25 minutes, and I'm playing on 4 times game speed. Now winning here does give Sandshrew some advantages. It gives it a 10% boost to its attack stat, which unlike in Generation 1 is a lower boost, because in Gen 1 all the badge boosts are 12.5%. Additionally, I get another TM. This one is better than in Generation 1. I can now use Rock Tomb, but in Generation 3 this move is pretty bad. It has 50 base power and 80% accuracy. I teach it in the place of Defense Curl, and then I continue with the run onto Route 3. Rock Tomb is useful here against the plentiful bug-type Pokemon. I grab the Person Berry before Mount Moon, and then inside the cave I fight some optional trainers to try and level up as much as possible, since Misty is just around the corner. I grab the Dome Fossil, and then I head into Cerulean City. Sandshrews level 20 now, and I want to do a little bit more training before fighting the rival with his Bulbasaur. It does know Sleep Powder. So I go to the gym to fight the 2 trainers. Unfortunately for me, I'm thinking about Generation 1, where the Swimmer's Shelter only has Withdraw as a water type move. In this case, it knows Icicle Spear, which is super effective, and this lets it knock Sandshrew out. So I guess I'm blacking out here and letting my HM users faint because I don't want to go back before Brock. In some ways, this is a frustration, but in other ways, it's a small advantage. I can continue to battle the Swimmer over and over again, knocking the Horsey out, and then black out to the shelter, gaining more and more trainer-boosted experience. Now, I could have intentionally tried to make that happen, but I do want to defeat him as quickly as possible. I pull it off in the next fight. After defeating the Picnicker, who was formerly a junior trainer, Sandshrew is almost level 22. So I'm going to fight some wild Pokemon west of the city so that I can level up, because then Sandshrew evolves into Sandslash. Its base stats increase to 75 HP, 100 attack, 110 defense, 45 special attack, 55 special defense, and 65 speed. Now I feel prepared to face the rival. His first Pokemon's Pidgeotto. Just brief aside, this back sprite makes Sandslash look really dynamic. It kind of looks like the Sugimori art that I'm using on the left-hand side of the screen. That's a nice touch. I'm able to use Rock Tomb against the Pidgeotto and knock it out in a single hit. Then the rival sends in Bulbasaur. My best move in terms of damage is Rock Tomb here, but for consistency I might want to use Sand Attack. Eventually I settle on using Rock Tomb and I get a lucky critical hit, knocking the Bulbasaur out in 1 turn. So this fight ends up being easy. I one-shot the Abra and then Rock Tomb one-hits the Rattata. That was a clean sweep for Sandslash. Now by this point in the game, if I was using a Sandslash in Generation 1, I would have access to Slash. And in that case, with 65 base speed, Sandslash would always get critical hits when using the move that's in its name. In Generation 3, crit mechanics no longer work this way, and I don't yet have access to Slash, so I don't get all of that upside. Still though, Sandslash is pretty capable capable throughout all of Route 24 and 25. Nearing the end of this area though, we do get to see one place where the increased damage from constant critical hits would have helped me. That's against Hiker Knob. By the way, his name is a reference to the translator of these games. I've never noticed that before. He takes a while to finish off because I have to chip away at his Geodudes using Slash, which rarely crits. If you didn't know, critical hits operate on a modifier system similar to stats. There are 4 stages that make changes to the critical hit rate. In Generation 3, if you have +1, you then get a 1 out of 8 chance to critical hit, which is a 12.5% chance. In Generation 2, moves that crit get +2 stages, but in Generation 3, they only get +1. So, comparing Generation 1 to Generation 3, in Gen 1 we have a critical hit rate of 99.61%. The reason this isn't 100 is because there's a 1 in 256 chance that you don't crit. Whereas in Generation 3, we have a 12.5% chance to crit with Slash. It's still an excellent move, it's just nowhere near as good. Now I'm fighting this hiker so I can get access to the secret power TM. This is Force of Habit at this point. Most Pokemon use secret power in Generation 3, but for Sandslash it doesn't really offer that much of an advantage. Slash already has a base power of 70, and so that's tied with secret powers. However, the upside of potentially paralyzing might be useful, especially against Misty, who's going to be coming up next. But I do really need to carefully consider if I want to battle her, because Sandslash isn't faster than her Starmie yet. Getting hit by Water Pulse after Water Pulse doesn't seem like a good idea. I'm going to fight the Digging Rocket first, get access to Dig, which is another case where we need to compare Generation 1 and Generation 3. Dig in the first generation has a base power of 100, whereas in Generation 3 it has a base power of 60. It lost 40% of its damage. Still, Dig is my first same type attack bonus move, so it makes sense to teach it in the place of Sand Attack. Lowering accuracy just isn't very good at this point in the run. Now I could go to Vermilion City, explore the SSN, level up more, and then come back to Misty, but I don't want to do that. Let's play a little bit risky and fight her now and see if Sandslash has what it takes. Staryu's first, I go for Slash, and I'm able to one-shot. Okay, this is encouraging. Starmie's next, it goes for Water Pulse and does more than half. Alright, I was hoping that was gonna hit a little bit less hard. I would now need to one-shot the Starmie, and it looks like with a critical hit, even that won't happen because Sandslash does just under half. As a result, the next Water Pulse finishes me off, and I'm heading to Vermilion City. Just on the other side of the tunnel, I can pick up a Citrus Berry. It's over here, it's a little hidden item. This might be helpful for me up against Misty, because if she does do more than half, then I'll recover some health, survive the next hit from Water Pulse, and potentially defeat her. But since I'm here now, I might as well continue my training on the SSN and then head back to her later. Now I've been talking a lot about how things got worse for Sandslash in Generation 3, but there is one way that things actually got better, because if I want to train on the SSN prior to Misty, I can use this room to heal my party. In Generation 1, there is no healing room on the SSN, despite what the YouTube comments will try to convince you of. Also, a lot of people think that you can heal in the beds in Generation 1. You can't. The beds don't do anything. They actually don't do anything in Generation 3 either. You have to talk to this lady in order to get healed. Okay, so now let's talk about some other disadvantages that Sandslash has in Generation 3. In Generation 1 on the SSN, you get access to Body Slam, which is a fantastic TM. In Generation 3, we get access to a good TM. It's Brick Break, but it isn't as good as Body Slam. While it can get rid of both Reflect and Light Screen, both of those moves aren't particularly common on the AI's teams during this game. Also, Brick Break has 75 base power, and it doesn't have a chance to paralyze. In some ways it is helpful though. The Rival's next, Rock Tomb one-shots Pidgeotto still, then Ivysaur comes in. My best possible damage against it in one turn is going to be Dig with an effective power of 90, but Slash has the chance to critical hit, and I think I'm going to two-hit anyway, so I'm going to use Slash for the possible upside. I do more than half. This gives Ivysaur one turn to do something. It goes for Sleep Powder and misses. Perfect. I knock it out on the next turn, Brick Break one-shots Raticate, and Slash takes care of Kadabra. Alright, are you ready to get rid of all the negativity and start talking about something positive? Look down at my speed. I'm not faster than Misty's Starmie, but how fast is Misty's Starmie? Well, in Generation 1, it has 56 speed, but in Generation 3, it only has 53 speed, meaning Sandslash is going to outspeed it just a little bit sooner. hey, I was able to find a way in which this game is slightly easier for Sandslash. That is one piece, and probably the first piece of positive news for our ground-type protagonist. I do a little bit more training on the SSN, level up to 28, now Sandslash's speed is 55, and then I head back to face Misty. Things are so much easier now. I'm still one-shotting the Staryu, so I'm gonna make it to the Starmie consistently. Slash does more than half, Water Pulse doesn't, and as a result, I'm able to defeat her on my first attempt back here. Wasting no time, let's completely destroy Lieutenant Surge. He is bad in every game that he's in. That said, I do think he's slightly more difficult here for Sandslash in comparison to Generation 1. In those games, his Raichu does not have access to Double Team, but in this game he does, so he could potentially waste some of Sandslash's time, since the move I'm using against him is Dig, which takes 2 turns. If I missed once, then things could potentially spiral out of control, but that's not how this plays out. Surge just rolls over and loses. Okay, trainer formerly known as Rapping Lass. She's not an issue in these games. She's much easier, but she wasn't an issue in Generation 1, so this is even between the 2 generations. Now after defeating her, Sandslash can pick up this TM, which in Generation 1 was Teleport. Absolutely useless. But in Generation 3, it is Aerial Ace, which could be useful later on. Inside Rock Tunnel, I can talk to the Move Tutor and give Sandslash Rock Slide, which is far superior to Rock Tomb. Okay, moving on to Rocket Hideout. In my rules, this is technically an optional area because you can skip the Marowak using the Poké Doll. Depending on how you configure your rule set for these solo challenges, this might not be an optional area though. But either way, it isn't optional in Generation 3. There is no way to skip this area. And also, coming in here gives us a chance to talk about Intimidate, one of the most annoying abilities for the NPC Pokemon to have. This trainer, this random rocket, has 2 Intimidate users, so my solo Pokemon's attack stat is going to be lowered by 2 stages when fighting this person. This is only the beginning of the frustrations that this ability is going to cause for physical attackers throughout this section of the game. So poor Sandslash once again has not aged well. Luckily, Brick Break's actually pretty useful here. It's super effective against all of Giovanni's Pokemon, so he's not a problem. In the department store, I purchased some protein to improve my attack stat, and then I faced the rival in Pokemon Tower. This fight is actually an interesting comparison between Generation 1 and Generation 3. Gyarados in red version has Hydro Pump, but in this game it only has Thrash and Bite. Now, the rival in Generation 1 will always send his Pokemon in the order they are defined on his team, whereas in FireRed he's going to send in the Pokemon he thinks is best suited to take on the Pokemon you currently have in battle. In this case, that means Ivysaur is coming in second. I was thinking my damage ranges would be similar to what they were on the SSN, so I'm going for Slash here, anticipating that I'm going to 2-shot. But I am close to knocking it out in 1 hit, so I should have probably used Dig for the increased base power. Ivysaur uses Sleep Powder, Sandslash falls asleep, and then it starts using Razor Leaf. 2 of these bring me down to 11 hit points, but then Sandslash wakes up and knocks it out. I have a tiny bit of health left over when the Gyarados comes in. Luckily for me, Rock Slide is able to flinch, even though it doesn't one-shot. As a result, I finish the Gyarados off, one-shot the Growlithe, and one-shot the following Kadabra. Now, as a post-mortem for that battle, I want to mention the fact that this fight is much easier in Generation 3 when compared to Generation 1. Gyarados doesn't have Hydro Pump, Rock Slide has a secondary effect, whereas it doesn't in Generation 1, and I was able to wake up and attack on the same turn, whereas in Generation 1, I would have simply woken up and not attacked, and then the Ivysaur would have knocked me out. Okay, so that's some good news. Now let's look at some bad news, which will affect this playthrough later on. The Chandler have Ghastly, and their ability is Levitate. That means ground-type moves can't hit these ghosts anymore. Unlike in Generation 1, where Dig and Earthquake gives solutions to all the ghost Pokemon. I can't wait till Sandslash gets to fight Agatha later in this run. Luckily for me at this point in the playthrough, Sandslash is so overleveled, so Rock Slide is an answer to the weak Ghastly here. Unfortunately for Sandslash, the frustrations from Levitate just continue. On Cycling Road, I fight Biker William, who gives fantastic experience points. In Generation 1, this would consist of 5 digs, getting me at least 1 more level. But in this case, all of his Pokemon have Levitate, so I have to attack them with other moves like Rock Slide or Slash. Pretty frustrating. And this could lead to a defeat for Sandslash because they're lowering my accuracy with Smokescreen, a move that they don't have in Generation 1, and they're also able to poison me. Luckily, I just barely pull through with 22 hit points remaining. Okay, now an advantage that doesn't exist in Generation 1. In Fuchsia City, I can talk to this move tutor just outside of the Kangaskhan pen and teach my Sandslash Substitute. This is the best Generation 3 move for solo challenges. It exists in Generation 1, it's a TM, but it's really hard to access. It takes so long because you have to buy coins 50 at a time and then purchase it from the game corner. Since I time all of my runs and my goal is to beat the game as fast as possible, Substitute is just never viable in those games. I teach it in the place of Brick Break because that's a TM that's available in the department store if I want to purchase it later on. Another factor for this decision-making process is that I need good damage against Koga. In Red version, Dig would just sweep his entire team, but in this game, 3 of his Pokemon have Levitate, so Dig is only useful against his Muck, and in that case, it's not always a great option. Let me show you why. Coughing is first, and I'm going to set up Substitute here so that it can't use Smokescreen or poison me. Also, if it uses Self-Destruct, then I'll block this powerful move. Now, unfortunately for me, I can't attack it directly with Dig, so I have to use Slash, which is going to 3-hit, giving Koga time to use a Hyper Potion, wasting my time. Also, Coughing breaks my Substitute, then Self-Destructs on my second Substitute, breaking it before the Muck comes in, which is just terrible timing for Sandslash, because this Muck is awful if you give it time to set up. It has Minimize and Acid Armor. In Generation 1, it has Disable, Poison Gas, Minimize, and Sludge. A much worse set, although it does still feature Minimize. That said, the AI would have no idea what it's doing. It's probably just going to spam random things in Generation 1, whereas here it really likes to set up. Because of this, watch my Sandslash slowly start crying as it loses to the Poison type specialist. Okay, fighting Koga again doesn't make any sense. Let's go to Silph and do some optional training. Okay, another thing, Gen 3 is so much worse for this thing. Here, there is the Bulk Up TM, which is replacing Swords Dance from Generation 1. So for Koga, I could have just grabbed Swords Dance and then set up and swept his team using Dig if it was Generation 1, but now in Generation 3, I don't even get Bulk Up, so no setup move from here. We're just going to do training against optional trainers, and then I wanted to see if maybe the rival would be possible. Sandslash is level 44. I have a Citrus Berry, my set is Slash, Rock Slide, Dig, and Substitute. I set up on the Pidgeot, and then I use Rock Slide to knock it out while it tries to use Feather Dance. Next, Venusaur comes in. I knew that I would block at least one hit with my Substitute, and I think that Dig is going to have enough damage to 2-shot. In this case, it's not always trying to attack me, sometimes it's trying to use Poison Powder instead. Also, I am not able to 2-hit, however, I 3-shot and I don't even lose my Substitute in the process. So I'm able to block the Gyarados' Intimidate, it just uses Leer, and then I knock it out with the second hit. Growlithe comes in, no Intimidate from this thing, Dig 1-shots leading to Alakazam. And in this case, it is much worse than it is in Generation 1, because there its best move is Psychic, but here it only has Future Sight. So the rival turns out to be a really easy battle. If I think about it now, a trend is emerging. All of the rival battles with Sandslash would be more difficult in Generation 1, and they're easier here in Generation 3. But everything other than the rival is more difficult. Giovanni is one of these cases. The Nidoqueen has Poison Point. It doesn't make me lose, it's just really annoying. And it's going to continue being annoying because there are many more of these Pokemon inside the Viridian City gym. But that's me getting a little bit ahead of myself. We have to face Sabrina and Blaine first. Sabrina is probably one of the most overhyped gym leaders in Generation 1. She's really not that good. My damage ranges here with Sandslash are quite excellent. Although, I do want to point out the fact that Dig is my best same type attack bonus move at this point in the game. In Generation 1, you can pick up the Earthquake TM inside of Silph. Now, while it does have the same base power as Dig in those games, it is at least available. If it was still in the same location, then I could have access to that move by now, which would give me an effective power of 150. That would certainly ensure that I one-shot Pokemon like this annoying Mr. Mime, or this Venomoth, although it is a flying type, so Earthquake wouldn't really work there after all. Alakazam is last, I use Dig, and I'm able to one-shot her ace. Now let's head to Cinnabar Island and take on Blaine. And you know, I said that line before I realized that I still haven't defeated Koga. I have to go back and battle him again. Luckily now my damage ranges are better because I'm very over-leveled. In this case, with one use of Dig, before the Muck squeezes in an Acid Armor, I'm able to one-shot it. I'm two-shotting the Cough nothing, and I'm gonna 4-hit the Wheezing, which is very slow, especially when Koga's using Hyper Potions, but Substitute gives me enough time to last through another Hyper Potion and then knock out his ace. If you're watching closely, this is still not the dominant performance you would expect from a ground type against a poison type specialist. This really just proves that Levitate is a fantastic ability for poison type Pokemon. Okay, so we haven't even talked about Erica yet. I'm gonna go back and battle her now that Koga is managed. She is very easy now that Sandslash is level 48. I figured putting her off just made sense. Why would you battle her earlier if there's even a small chance that Sandslash might lose? There's no difference here between Generation 1 and Generation 3 because you can put off Erica until just before Giovanni in all of the games. We are into rapid fire gym leaders now because Blaine is next. Now in Generation 1, he has super potions and he likes to use them when his Pokemon have full health. This makes absolutely no sense. In Generation 3, he is much more competent. Although, he is not more competent than he is in Yellow version. That is by far Blaine's most difficult incarnation. Thing is, in Generation 1, I can just set up with Swords Dance when using Sandslash, and I will have Earthquake by that point. So again, here's another point in the game where FireRed is more difficult for Sandslash. Also, 2 of Blaine's Pokemon have Intimidate. The lead Growlithe has it, so there's no way to block this, while I can use Substitute to block Arcanines. But that would only work if I had enough health to have a Substitute by that point in the battle, and I don't. So Arcanine knocks out Sandslash. The solution here is just don't try to set up Substitute. Losing health doing that doesn't make sense. I can one-hit the Growlithe, the Ponyta, and the Rapidash just using Dig. Then I get intimidated again, but at least I have full health remaining for Blaine's final Pokemon. My Dig does half, it does a lot with Fire Blast, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna 2-hit. Luckily for me, my second Dig gets a critical hit, knocking out his final Pokemon. Without that, I think Arcanine would have survived and Sandslash would have lost. So let me put this in simple terms. My ground type needed luck, a critical hit, to get by the fire type specialist. Poison Point, it's really annoying. Warren, he is really annoying. He has 5 Pokemon. He only has 1 Pokemon in Generation 1. That does slow me down a little bit. But don't worry, Giovanni is going to be really easy. In Generation 1, Giovanni's team is awful, but at least he has a Rhydon. In Generation 3, he doesn't have a Rhydon. He has 2 Rhyhorn. This makes no sense. It bothers me every time I look at his team. What an unnecessary nerf for the final gym leader in the region. I genuinely don't know what Game Freak was thinking, so much so that I have started to theorize in my brain that maybe this is just a mistake. My supporting piece of evidence for this is in the May battle in Rustboro City, which is optional and only included in Emerald version. She has a Torkoal, which is very clearly supposed to be a Slugma. Maybe something similar here happened for Giovanni. Now, I will mention, in Generation 1, the yellow team is very difficult, but his red and blue team is just terrible. That said, I still think he's more difficult here in FireRed because in yellow version and in red version, you have Swords Dance and you have Earthquake, but here I don't have either of those moves. So I have to knock out his Pokemon more slowly. Considering this is a speedrun, that does make this fight technically more difficult. And also both of the Nidos have Poison Point, which can always be annoying. With him defeated, I get the TM for Earthquake. Finally, at long last, I can upgrade from Dig. As I prepare for the rival, I want to mention that if you had different rules than I do, and you're allowed to use items in battle, you could potentially use the Fissure TM that's gifted to you by Giovanni in Generation 1 in combination with an X accuracy to take less turns to set up every battle rather than using Swords Dance. So with different rules, Generation 1 would still be easier than FireRed in this case. The list just goes on and on. Okay, back to the rival. Is this one going to be more challenging than it would be in Generation 1? And the answer is yes, because his team is kind of competent here. Like, the Rhyhorn has good moves, Rock Blast for example. It's not good against Sandslash, but it is an upgrade from his absolutely terrible Generation 1 red and blue sets. That said, all of this can be played around by using Substitute. Then Pidgeot doesn't know that I have a Substitute in place and it's going to waste its time with things like Feather Dance. Venusaur is trying to set up with Growth and I can 2-hit with Earthquake. Rock Slide misses on Gyarados, but after that I'm able to 2-shot, losing my Substitute in the process. Rhydon is better, but still incompetent, so I can set up Substitute again and then 1-shot using Earthquake. That was with a critical hit. I block Growlith's Intimidate, 1-shot. Why is it still Growlithe by this point in the game? We don't know. Alakazam is next, and it does get style points here, because it has 126 speed, which is 3 more than Sandslash, so it moves first using Disable and disables Earthquake, preventing my attack. Nice job, but on the next turn it just goes for Calm Mind. I use Slash and one-shot. In Victory Road, I think it's time to do a little bit of optional training. The cool trainers have bigger teams here, which does make the experience yields better. I think this is one way that FireRed is a little bit easier than Generation 1. I level up to 55, and then prior to Lorelei, I'm going to use my rare candies. I take Sandslash all the way up to level 65, and now I think it's prepared for the Elite Four. For Lorelei, I have access to Rock Slide, which is super effective. It's not able to one-shot the Dugong, but it is going to confidently 2-hit. However, I should be using Slash turn 1 here to prevent her from using a full restore. Next is Cloyster, and its moveset is terrible in Generation 3. Spikes, Protect, Hail, and Dive. I'm not really concerned about any of these. I guess Dive is the best, but it doesn't like to use these. It's going to go for Protect, so I'm going to set up with Substitute. Then after that, I can use Earthquake to knock it out. By the way, Earthquake and Rock Slide actually have the same effective power against ice types when you're using a mono ground type. This is a mistake I make a bunch in my solo challenges because I'm used to using ground rock types because I grew up in Generation 1. After knocking out the Cloyster, Slowbro's next. I get a lucky critical hit with Earthquake one-shotting. I'm taking some damage from Hail every turn, but I'm not too concerned about it because my substitute is still in place after the Jinx. The only way I lose now is if I'm not able to two-shot the Lapras, and Earthquake is confidently able to do this. Bruno. He's definitely more difficult in FireRed because he actually exists in these games. Although, he's really easy in this case. I one-shot all of his Pokemon except the Machamp, which is a 2-hit, and it just goes for Bulk Up. Agatha, as said before, definitely more difficult in this game. She has Levitate. Now, the Gengar is using Double Team, and then I don't miss with Rock Slide getting a critical hit one-shotting. I one-shot the following Golbat, and then I have to 2-hit the Haunter. A little bit annoying. She uses a full restore, so it takes extra time. But from there, I'm able to knock out the final Gengar, and I actually get to use Earthquake against a Poison type, finishing off her team. I use my final rare candy going up to level 68 over a damage rounding threshold before taking on Lance. He leads with Gyarados, and this is one I want to get your opinions on. Is he more difficult in Generation 1 or in Generation 3? Here, Gyarados comes out right away, hits you with Intimidate, lowering your attack stat, and that really hurts. But in Generation 1, his Gyarados has Hydro Pump, and it doesn't in FireRed. I personally think as a physical attacker, in most cases the Gyarados is more annoying in this game in comparison to Generation 1, but Hydro Pump is a really strong move, and Lance's Gyarados is notoriously awful when you're using Fire-type Pokemon in Generation 1. In this case, I have a lot of struggles knocking it out. He keeps using full restores, and I just decided to cut my losses because I didn't think I had played this battle particularly well. Substitute turn 1, Dragon Rage cannot break it. After that, I can use Rock Slide, flinch the Gyarados, and knock it out in only 2 hits. So, is the attack loss going to negatively impact my outcome throughout the rest of the battle? Well, Aerodactyl is faster than Sandslash, and it is able to break my substitute using Wing Attack. But Rock Slide is doing good damage, more than half. Aerodactyl continues using Wing Attack. I set up Substitute again, and I know it's going to hold through at least one more Wing Attack, and in this case it even does when Aerodactyl crits. I knock out the prehistoric Pokemon and move on to Lance's ace, Dragonite. I get lucky here. Critical hit from Rock Slide, that one-shots. This leaves only 2 Dragonairs. Both of them are really bad in FireRed, so I'm able to finish them off with relative ease. In Generation 1, one of these Dragonairs would have had Ice Beam and Bubble Beam if you're playing Yellow version, but if you're playing Red, then they're just going to have things like Agility. They're pretty bad in that game. So I think FireRed compared to Red, FireRed's more difficult for Sandslash, but FireRed compared to Yellow, I think the debate is still out there, at least when considering this battle in isolation. Up until now, the rival has been easy in FireRed for Sandslash. Let's see if that trend remains true against the champion. Pidgeot's up first. Substitute, block Feather Dance, use Rock Slide to knock it out after a flinch, and a full restore. Venusaur comes in next. I can use Earthquake to 2-shot. It's going to attack with Solar Beam, its only grass type move. Even after a Citrus Berry, I still have enough damage to avoid the grass type attack. Gyarados is next. No Intimidate for him, which is perfect. Rock Slide crits, one-shotting. Alakazam does break my substitute with Psychic because it's faster, but I'm able to one-shot using Earthquake. Rise Sidon also falls to a single hit. Arcanine does get an Intimidate off, but its Flamethrower isn't doing enough damage, so I can use Earthquake, finish it, and defeat the champion. Sandslash clocks in with a first playthrough time of 1 hour 27 minutes and 10 seconds. It had 9 faults consisting of 8 resets and 1 blackout. It finished the game at level 69 with a game time of 5 hours and 7 minutes. Okay, I'm going to film the post game now. This is an independent section, so I restart the timer and reset all the metrics. One thing to do here before fighting the Elite Four again: complete the Sevy Islands and get access to the Swords Dance move tutor on 7 Island. I teach this move in the place of Slash, keeping Earthquake, Rock Slide, and Substitute. Sandslash has now reached its final form. Against Lorelei, I can just spam Swords Dance because this Dugong loves to set up with Double Team, and when it does that, it's basically useless. However, it also can use Surf, which does massive damage to Sandslash, but I still survive, and I've got to +4 attack. From here, Earthquake one-shots Dugong, Earthquake one-shots Cloyster, by far her most defensive Pokemon, and I am faster than her Jinx, so this is a clean sweep for Sandslash. Against Bruno, things are a little bit different. Set up Substitute, then go for Swords Dance when his Steelix is just trying to lower my speed with Rock Tomb. This is not an effective strategy for it. I think I could have set up more, but I only go to +2, and then from there, Earthquake is able to sweep his remaining Pokemon, even one-shotting both of the Steelix and the Machamp. Agatha causes 1 quick reset because her first Gengar has 3 more speed than Sandslash. It's able to move first and put me to sleep with Hypnosis. This is where I should say FireRed is more difficult than Generation 1 because this game has League rematches, but Generation 1 doesn't. Although I personally don't think this is the best criteria to judge the games against each other based on. Generation 1 just doesn't really have a post game, but these games do. So Agatha's easy if Hypnosis misses, or I'm able to set up Substitute against the first Gengar. From there, Rock Slide for the Ghosts and the Crobat, and then Earthquake for the Arbok. This leads to Lance. Here he is pretty incompetent in FireRed. If you set up with Substitute, usually he likes to spam Thunder Wave, but he won't be doing that because I'm a ground type Pokemon. This means Gyarados instead is going to be setting up with Dragon Dance, increasing its attack and speed. This allows it to break my Substitute and hit with a massive Earthquake, doing about half. By this time, I have set up significantly to +3 attack. This lets me one-shot Kingdra, the Ace Dragonite, and then the first Dragonite. Well, in this case, the second Dragonite. That leads to Aerodactyl, which is faster than Sandslash. Thing is, it's a physical attacker, and I have a lot of physical defense, so it can't knock out Sandslash. It does a tiny amount of damage before fainting to a single Rock Slide. We have made it back to the champion. This battle is a little bit more complicated than the first time through the league. Here he leads with Heracross, and I thought I could set up while it tries to spam Rock Tomb, but it is also able to break my Substitute using Mega Horn. After setting up to +4, I can't one-shot the bug fighting type using Rock Slide. It just barely survives, and it lowers my speed. Because of this stat debuff, the rest of the fight just falls apart. I'm able to one-shot the Venusaur, but then the Gyarados comes in, it uses Intimidate, Rock Slide can one-shot, then Tyranitar comes out, gets a massive critical hit with Crunch, and that spells defeat when Alakazam outspeeds with Psychic. For my second attempt against him, I've upgraded my moveset, teaching Aerial Ace in the place of Rock Slide so that I can one-shot the Heracross after setting up. But it breaks my Substitute faster this time, and it's committed to using Mega Horn, breaking it once again. So on +2, I try to knock out the Heracross. Then on the Venusaur, I set up one more turn of Swords Dance. This way I can one-shot using Aerial Ace. Gyarados comes in, Intimidate, and now I don't have a good move here because I lack Rock Slide, so the water type uses Hydro Pump and Sandslash faints. Okay, everything is starting to fall apart here against the champion for Sandslash. So what is it going to take? Well, I can get lucky with Substitute. If Heracross spams Rock Tomb trying to lower my speed long enough, then I'm able to get set up to +6. From here, I can sweep the rest of his team provided Rock Slide doesn't miss because I'm no longer trying to use Aerial Ace. It's a little bit anticlimactic, but this is how I solve the champion and finish the post game with Sandslash. It gets a time of 20 minutes and 38 seconds with 3 resets at level 77. This is a cumulative game time of 6 hours and 19 minutes. This is a very good post-game performance. Right now, Pokemon that have times under 25 minutes are earning themselves placements in the A tier. Sandslash wasn't quite able to scrape into the S tier though, which is under 20 minutes. Still, with its time today, it is able to beat out Hitmonlee, Omastar, and Dugong, earning itself the first placement in the A tier. For the main tier list, Sandslash did not fare so well. And it's also ruining my normal distribution here because we're getting a lot of Pokemon in the C tier now. It earned itself a spot just above Dugtrio, another ground-type Pokemon. These two were actually so close that they were only a minute apart from each other. Now I should quickly make an observation about ground-type Pokemon in this tier list. Right now 3 of them are in the C tier, including Nidoking. That said, there's also one more ground-type that I have ranked, which is Rhydon, and it's currently in the E tier. The Rock-type definitely drags it down a little bit, and also the fact that it has a slow growth rate, unlike Dugtrio, Sandslash, and Nidoking. The reason Nidoking is outperforming both Sandslash and Dugtrio is because, well, it's a fantastic Pokemon. It's Nidoking, the speedrunning Pokemon of choice. Also, it has a medium slow growth rate, which is so much better. That said, my current result with Nidoking, which is 1 hour 23 minutes and 32 seconds, was filmed very early into this FireRed series. I'm sure if I come back and revisit that thing, it's gonna get much better results. If you want to see how bad my play was when I started this series, check out the Nidoking video. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much, it means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.